The Besavior is the hottest new controller for your PlayStation 5, which unlocks a ton of features. It also includes back buttons, and it has a built-in B-loader option, which completely bypasses the PlayStation block for third-party and other controllers such as Xbox, PlayStation 4, Switch, anything else. The Besavior unlocks all of that, but it does have a few shortcomings, and I'm gonna try to overcome those today as we do a teardown and rebuild of the Besavior controller. Hello and welcome back to Gears and Tech. As you know, on this channel, I love to get my hands on some sweet new tech, especially in the PlayStation world, because it fascinates me. Something else that fascinates me is seeing how things work. So you've seen me do other controller teardowns just to see what they look like, most notably the Scuff controller, and I'm curious to know what's inside this Besavior controller. It comes with this add-on back pack, which converts the controller to have back buttons, but also does so much more as far as programmability and button remapping and all of that. So I'm curious, what does the inside of this controller look like? Well, fortunately for me and for you, I guess, the Besavior team actually sent me two DIY Besavior kits as well. So this controller comes as a completely assembled Besavior all-in-one controller for about $170 US. If that seems like a bit much for you and you are a little bit tech savvy, you can buy this. This is a Besavior DIY mod kit. It allows you to take a standard PlayStation 5 controller and adapt it to have the Besavior backpack on it. So we're gonna do a quick unboxing of the kit. We'll go through what's in the kit, and then I'm gonna actually build that kit onto this PlayStation controller. Now you may have noticed there's a couple other goodies here, and I will talk about those goodies in a minute after we do this unboxing. So there's nothing special about the box, really. It's just a cardboard box. Inside, what we find is this circuit board with a number of wires. There are a total of 5 wires, which look like they do have some soldering required, which is why I have my soldering iron out here, because we will have to actually use the soldering iron for this install. But we've got that. We've got a flat screwdriver and a pry tool, as well as some extra screws. Those are probably for if you lose some of the screws when you disassemble the controller, because I should not need any screws for this kit. It also has these printed circuit boards, which we will open up in a minute. It comes with USB-A to USB-C charging cord, which if you buy just the Besavior kit, it actually comes with this cord as well. So it's nice that the kit comes with the charging cord. And it's got this, which is a little bit surprising. It is a USB-C to USB-A adapter cord, which would be used on your assembled Besavior to allow you to plug into the Besavior USB-C port and then plug any of your USB peripherals into here for the B-loader component of this. So this is what allows you to plug in your ZIM, your Cronus ZEN, or any of your wired PlayStation controllers or non-PlayStation controllers, as this will unlock the ability to use any wired or wireless controller. One thing that is surprising on this is that this is very raw. So there's no plastic sheet that goes around here or around here. I don't know if they just forgot to include it, but it also has this USB-C port in the side of this side here. I'm not sure what that's for, because the factory Besavior controller has a plastic cover over this, so you don't get to see all of those components, but that is included. And then the final piece, which is a back shell that has the Besavior piece already screwed and attached onto it, with a little ribbon cable here for the final assembly. So here is your first look at what's included in the Besavior DIY kit complete assembly. So the back shell is the same back shell that they have on the actual completed Besavior controller. So there's nothing different there. The one thing that you will notice on the controller that I plan to use, it actually has a blue back on it. So when I put this on, it will convert the bottom half of my controller to black, which I'm not sure if I'm like super excited about. I did consider actually seeing if I could mod this to accept the Besavior back buttons so that I could keep it all blue. That seems like a bit more than what I'm willing to do today for this build, so I might do it in a future build when I make my other Besavior controller, but not today. Continuing on with our unboxing, I do want to go through what all of these are, just so you have an idea what you're looking at here. So we've got this, which is an interface ribbon cable that connects into the PS5 controller motherboard. It gives you access to the basic functionality of your face buttons. Any of the back button mod kits that you buy actually comes with something similar to this, because that's how they intercept those signals. It also has these, and I'm gonna lay them out here like this. Now, you're not gonna use all of these. It depends on the version of controller that you have. So you can see on here, and I'll show my over shoulder cam here. This says Besavior FT2 V2, and then there'll be one as well. There, this is the Besavior FT2 1. So those are for the different versions of the controller. And then same with this, if I flip this over, you'll see we've got Besavior FT21 V2 and FT1. So depending on which controller you have will decide which one of these ribbon cables we're going to use. And you will know once you take it apart, because only one of them will fit. So you can't accidentally use the wrong ones. So that's okay. And then the final piece would be this, and this says what, Besavior FT3. Now this does require soldering, so you will have to do soldering no matter what, because this goes on the backs of the analog sticks to intercept the analog signal and unlock the actual B loader functionality of the controller. So you have to solder these on, and we will be using that soldering iron for this part of the install. I will be showing you that when we get to it. And then in here, I told you there was these wires. Let me get the main motherboard out of here. So we've got the main circuit board. This is where all the action happens. And once you've got these ribbon cables in position, they will simply snap into the specific locations on here. You've also noticed these wires. And what these wires are for is a couple of things. Now, I don't want to do a lot of soldering, and some of these wires go on some pretty small, tight places. So I'm going to leave out a couple of the wires and just see if I need to use them. So specifically on this board in the top here, see, my eyes aren't even good enough to see what I'm looking at. So 3 of these will connect to these pin spots right here on the top. And I'm gonna hold this up. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on here, but you've got 3 reference locations on there. That is to interface with the R3 and the L3 buttons. So that's pushing down on these buttons here. And it also interfaces with the touchpad button. So if you wanted to remap features to those buttons, you would need to have those wires soldered on. Now, I have never, ever remapped the push button on here or remapped the L3 or R3 buttons. So I'm going to actually leave those off. I'm not going to solder those on as part of the install today. These other 2 wires, the black and the red, are actually used to power this board. So they will need to be soldered on, and I will show you where and how that ends up getting soldered. So that'll go through as part of the install. So that's everything that is included in your DIY kit. Now, if you are looking at this kit and you're saying, holy crap, I don't know how to do any of that stuff and I have no idea what Anton just said, consider this. The price of this controller in Canada is almost $100. The price of this DIY kit is about $60 US, so that's again about $80 Canadian. So all in, if you're installing this yourself, you're gonna spend about $180 to $200 to be able to build this yourself. That's Canadian dollars. This controller right here costs $170 US dollars, which is about 220 to 230 Canadian dollars. It is far cheaper for you to just buy the ready assembled Besavior controller than it is for you to buy this kit and pay somebody to install it. So if you cannot do this install yourself, it is way cheaper to just buy a ready-made controller. And personally, I think I'm confident enough to be able to do this build. I'm going to do it. We'll find out if it works when I'm done. But for how much hassle it is to tear a controller apart, build it, and then put it all back together, the $30 price difference is worth it for me to just buy a ready assembled controller. But because we are disassembling the controller, it does allow me to do something that the Besavior controller does not. And that would be where these two components come in. So right here, I have an extreme rate clicky trigger mod. That will convert my shoulder buttons, my L1, R1, L2, R2 buttons into clicky trigger buttons. So you can see the throw on these are really big. I mostly use my controller for first-person shooters, such as Call of Duty, and the clicky triggers make a huge difference. So I will be installing this clicky trigger mod while I've got the controller all torn apart to do this install anyway. So we'll be doing that. And inside here, I have something you guys have seen on this channel before, but let me open it up anyway and show you. Now I gain another screwdriver and another pry tool. And then inside of here, this is an extreme rate adjustable height thumbstick kit. So you can see there's a high one and there's a low one. It comes with thumb caps that get installed underneath here. So I'm gonna be in there anyway, so I want to have my adjustable height thumbstick. This will actually make my Besavior controller into the ultimate controller. This is equivalent to the best of the best of the best controller that you can get if you're looking at like Scuff, by adding the clicky triggers, the adjustable height thumbsticks and all that. Now, if this is not for you, again, I show you in a different video how to actually adapt these to be clicky triggers with special stick-on component that I link to in my Amazon store, as well as adjustable height thumbsticks by using thumbstick extension caps. So you can kind of cheat that. The options to add to this are going to cost you about the same as what it costs to buy these components to do it the other way. So there are solutions for guys who are not super tech savvy, and there's solutions for guys who, like me, are curious and like how things go. So in the beginning of the video, I said we were going to tear this down. Well, we don't need to tear it down because we see what all the components are right here. And this controller right here started life as a factory PlayStation 5 controller. It's just that the Besavior team modified this controller using this kit and then shipped it out just like this. So that's the only difference. So with the unboxing all out of the way, it is time to tear down the controller and start doing the install. Now I'm going to fast forward through a lot of the install because I've done this before. I've put it on the channel before. If you've never seen a controller get torn down, you can look at that, or you can pause at different points. Through this video, I'll just try to do speed up through those parts. The first thing is tear down the PlayStation 5 controller. Now, if you were going to install the wires for the reprogramming of the touchpad button, you would have to unscrew this and get down to the circuit board on the touchpad. Again, I'm not doing that part of this install. I'm gonna just leave it just like this. So I can set that to the side over there. Now I do need to get these clicky triggers off. The screws for those are on the top side here. So there's one out. We'll get the other one out the same way. So we're gonna install the clicky trigger mod first, just because I'd like to get it out of the way. So let's open this guy up. Now you would have seen this part of the install before. This should not be anything new to you guys because I've done this before. So now I've got a ton more screws and stuff. These are not instructions. These are just telling me where to get my warranty, and it's a manual of sorts. So I'm gonna leave that over here. Got a big mess of stuff. We'll get out our clicky triggers. Like that. And you'll notice that both circuit boards are pretty much the same, and that's because the L2 and the R2 are pretty much the same. When you roll them onto the side, it's the same. When you roll it onto the other side, it's still the same. So even though it looks like there's an R2 and an L2, there really isn't. They're both the same module, which is smart on Sony's part. Now I do need to undo all of the screws here to open this, and I need to pull the ribbon cable out and undo a screw under there so that I can get access to the side. So we'll do that right now, and we'll just fast forward through this. So there is the first module done. The clicky trigger's in. So if you look here, you can see it has a very short throw. We were using these spacers here in case you're not sure which ones to use. It's all screwed back together and the ribbon cable is plugged in. So now it's time to just do the other one the same way as this one. So there we have it. 2 trigger mods already complete. They're ready to install back into the controller. Now, if you are doing the Besavior install, the step that I just did is not necessary unless you're adding clicky triggers. So I wanted to add the clicky triggers. That's why I did this step. So I can now reattach these into my controller slot here. So I'm just going to do that real quick, and then we will move on to the Besavior install, which is the next part of this. Now I know I promised you I'd move on to the Besavior part, but while I'm here, this is a great time to remove the PlayStation thumbsticks and install our extreme rate thumbsticks. Now these only go one of two ways, so it's impossible to screw it up. There's one, there's two. So I do not need these thumbsticks anymore. I can put those over here. And this gives me the ability to swap out my thumbsticks to be whatever I want, whenever I want. So we'll cover that once the full install is done. But now what I need to do is flip this guy over, and I'm going to start with this guy because I'm not looking forward to it the most, especially since I'm not sure what all I'm supposed to solder. Now I'm going to move all this over here. It was all so neatly laid out, but I need room to run my soldering station. So if you're not sure which way this ribbon goes here, there's only one way it can go, because when this is in, it's going to be up over here, and then this ribbon will need to plug into this guy right here. So you can't do it backwards. If you try, it won't line up with any of the holes anyway. And then the question you're going to ask is, well, what needs soldering and what doesn't? I think all of these holes need soldering. So it will sit in here, something like that. We'll start with this side. Okay, she's getting warm now. Now I do need some extra solder, which I've got in here. This should be enough. This is just a flux core solder. And all I want to do, oh yeah, I can smell that getting warm now. I'm gonna turn this around so that I can see it. And I just want to get a dab of solder on here just to hold that on. And then we'll do a couple other ones just to hold it down in place, and then we can do all of the rest. So I'll get another one over here on this side just to hold it right now. So now that we've got a few points soldered down and holding in place, we're just going to go and touch some solder onto the rest of the points, and then I'll just fast forward through that. You don't need to see that like in great detail, but I'm going to do that next. Now, believe it or not, that was the easy part. These ones are pretty easy to do. The next two that I need to do will be these power wires, the red one and the black one. Now, the points where they connect on the board are this guy right here. So this is the positive lead off of the battery connection right there. The other one's going to connect onto one of these legs right here, which is the USB port ground connection. So we're just going to solder onto that. It is a pretty big connection, so it's easy to do. The harder one's going to be this guy right here, which is the positive wire. And ideally, we want it to be sticking up so that we have the most functionality. So what we're going to do is get our wire tinned and then see if we can just tap it. It is helpful to have a very fine tipped soldering iron, which I did a review on this soldering kit in a different video, which may not even be out yet. But if you're looking for a station like this is very inexpensive and it seems to be working quite well. It gives you very good fine control of your temperature and whatnot. So what I'm going to do is just get a little ball of solder on here like that, and then I'm going to try and tin this guy like that. Okay, and then we're going to just touch it onto this positive connection right here and hopefully heat it up enough. Okay, now you do want to make sure it's bonded because I don't want it breaking off like that. So it was not on very well. So I'm going to try and add a little bit of solder onto the positive contact on here just to help get a really good connection on there. So now that we've got the power and the ground soldered in, it is time to assemble the controller pretty much most of the way before we do our final connection on the circuit board. So we're just going to throw it back together as it normally would, and then we'll come back when we're ready to do the final connections. So now we've got pretty much everything back together. The only thing left to do is to put the battery in and then connect all this up into our final solder joints. Now, I don't know how good my soldering on the power wire went. I might have bridged some gaps that I didn't want to. So what I'm gonna actually do is put the battery in, turn the controller on and see if it turns on while it's still apart. I might even try and sync it to my PlayStation just to make sure that that side of things is working before I continue with any more of the install. So we're going to plug this in like that, and we're gonna just lift that cord up like that. So I mean, the PlayStation should turn on. Maybe the battery's dead. Let's plug it into the PlayStation using this cord and see what happens. Hopefully I didn't totally break this controller, because that would suck. Let's find out. Switch to that input, and then we'll plug this in. Okay, we've got the orange light to show that it's charging, which is a positive sign. We'll press the PS button. It is trying to look for the PlayStation. Looks like it is turning the PlayStation on. A new version of the DualSense wireless controller device software is available. So I can't update now because my battery is too low. That's fine. I want to make sure all my buttons are working first here. So let's get in with this controller and then see if this guy, because we did mess with those other buttons. It says my battery's too dead right now to do anything, and it does seem really dead, but I don't know why my face buttons aren't working. I'm tempted to pull this apart just to check that connection. Since the battery power is so low, all I can do is just continue on and assume that everything's okay, and then we'll charge it after, I guess. So let's put the battery in like that. Get these all up out of the way and start connecting our Besavior. So now the Besavior has sticky pads on the back, which you can take off and stick it into on the battery in this corner here. I personally don't like doing that until all of my other connections are made. So these have little flip up locking tabs. So I'm gonna flip them all up, and then we're gonna hopefully get everything connected here. Shove them in further. Now that those are all in, what I actually want to do is see if I can connect this up and see if the Besavior powers up without these power connections made. Because if I can skip that step, I would love to skip it in the future. So let's see. This is not the world's longest ribbon cable, so it's a bit of a pain to actually get it connected. Welcome back. We had to do some off-camera troubleshooting just on the install kit. I was doing the testing and I noticed that the face, X, circle, square, and triangle were not working. So I pulled out the ribbon cable, I did some meter checking, and I found that there's a disconnect between those contacts. So if you're doing this install yourself, that disconnect is on purpose. It's what allows them to remap to those buttons. So all of the other back button mods actually have a pass-through on there, whereas this one does not. So when I went to test it on the PlayStation 5, I was not able to press those buttons, and I thought that was a problem. So it turns out that is normal, and the way I figured that out was actually just continuing with the install. So I'll get you a shot inside here of the finished install, and there's some lights. So we soldered the ground wire on, and we soldered the battery positive wire on, so the device will power up. So now all I've got to do is snap this shell together. Now again, I did not take the double-sided tape off of here to stick that on because this is very tight. This ribbon cable to the Besavior header is very, very, very short, so it's hard to get it in place. So I find it easier if I just don't double-sided tape that on. Once the controller's together, it will hold up just fine anyway, so not too worried about it. There we go. So now we should be able to power this on. Now my buttons work. So you can see back there on my PlayStation, I can press X and O and all of that, and it does work. So that is excellent news. I'm gonna power this off because it really shouldn't be on while I'm doing this stuff. So next, all we gotta do is just finish putting this back together and finish the last little bit of our clicky trigger mod. So I'm going to screw this together now with these screws here. I can move that solder out of the way. So the screws Go in here. Now we can put the faceplate on like that, and that snaps on. It all snaps properly like that. And then we've got our thumb caps. So I use alternating. I use a tall thumb cap on this side like that, and a short one on this side like that. And then that gives me what I need. Now I just got to do the clicky triggers on the front, which is going to be these little small circle guys here. So I'll take that guy out and take that guy out, and then all it does is goes in this little hole. Does it go in those little holes? Might be lying to you guys. Hold up. I thought they just go in those little holes. Did they change those too? It's definitely not those ones. Could be this one. It's gotta be this, but that doesn't seem, it's not sticking in there. Normally they stick in. They're firmer than that, but let's try it anyway. So there's that one. Then we just stick this in. Now these used to fit tighter than this in these holes. I don't know why they don't, but once it's in place, it doesn't matter because it does still make it clicky. There we go. Clicky face plates and everything. And that is really it. We now have the world's first Starlight Blue Besavior controller with extreme rate adjustable height thumbsticks and clicky trigger mod to be the ultimate FPS controller. Now all we got to do is try it out. So I'm going to go over to the PlayStation here, which has been synced up. We'll move the cameras around so you can see, and we'll pull it up and just test some of these features, make sure that they're working as expected. So here you can see I can pull up the menu, I can move all around, I can select options, I can switch through games, I can, move around on here. So that's pretty much it as far as converting your regular controller into a Besavior controller. Now, a couple questions you're gonna ask yourself. Is this worth it? I would say this is a very, very tough install. Myself, I'm quite comfortable taking stuff like this apart. I'm comfortable with doing this kind of thing, and it took me a couple hours to do this install. That's including filming and troubleshooting and all of that, but it's a very finicky installation kit. It's a little bit harder than like your extreme rate install kits and that sort of thing. But in the end, it does give you the freedom to add other features such as those adjustable height thumbsticks and the clicky triggers and all of that. That's nice to have the ability to do that while you're in there anyway. But for me, my personal recommendation would be just buy one that's pre-built and ready to go. Get the color that you want once they have different colors available, and just be happy. Keep in mind, if you do want the clicky triggers, you can get these trigger attachments that make like a makeshift trigger stop. You can also get these adjustable height thumbsticks that just snap right on. So you can get pretty much the same features that I gained by opening it and doing the install myself without having to open your own controller. So overall, you can do it. It might be fun for you, but if you're not really excited about tearing apart a PlayStation controller, this pre-built one is the option that you're looking for, I promise you. Hey, thanks for watching all the way to the end of this video. We hope you enjoy the content in this video, and we'd love to have you come back. Consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And for those subscribers who are looking for that extra special thing that you can do to support this channel, consider joining our members group. That's where we're building this community, the Gears and Tech community, where we can all enjoy content together. You'll get special perks, which we'd love for you to check out by clicking the link down below. For those of you who are just happy to watch the video, that's okay too. You can check out some of our other content right over here, where we've got some previous videos that have already been uploaded and enjoyed by many of our viewers already. We do hope to see you again. This has been Gears and Tech. Have a great day.